Blog Talk Radio.
You are now listening to True Murder, the most shocking killers in true crime history, and the authors that have written about them. Gacy, Bundy, Dahmer, The Night Stalker, BTK. Every week, another fascinating author talking about the most shocking and infamous killers in true crime history. True Murder, with your host, journalist and author, Dan Zupansky.
Good evening, this is your host, Dan Zupansky, for the program True Murder, the most shocking killers in true crime history, and the authors have written about them. On January 10, 2013, Kendrick Johnson's parents reported their 17-year-old son missing. The next day at Kendrick's school, Lowndes High School in Valdosta, Georgia, in the gym, students saw what they thought was a pair of socks sticking out of a gym mat. But when they approached, they told investigators they realized it was a body. According to Lowndes County Sheriff Chris Prine, Kendrick Johnson died while reaching into an upright gym mat in the old gym on January 10th, trying to retrieve a sneaker that had fallen inside. Instead, Kendrick fell in, couldn't get out, and smothered to death from positional asphyxiation. The original autopsy report ruled Johnson's death an accident, stating that the teen suffocated while getting stuck in a gym mat while reaching for a sneaker. However, Johnson's parents weren't convinced it was an accident, and they got a court order to have their son's body exhumed. The second autopsy report showed the teen's death was not an accident, stating that Johnson had sustained non-accidental blunt force trauma. During an autopsy, internal organs are removed and examined before return for burial. But when the private pathologist who conducted the second autopsy on Johnson opened up the teen's remains, the brain, heart, lungs, liver, and other viscera were missing. Every organ from the pelvis to the skull was gone and had been replaced with newspaper. Federal prosecutor now, Michael Moore, is reopening the case. The case that we are featuring this evening, the story that we're talking about, is the Kendrick Johnson murder, with my special guest, Fred Rosen and Beau Webster. Welcome back to the program, gentlemen, Fred Rosen and Beau Webster.
My pleasure, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for having us, Dan.
Well, thank you. This is an incredible story, and I'm glad to be involved in any way, shape, or form. As I had thought when I first was notified of this story from Fred Rosen, this is an incredible case that's now, I really do believe it's gaining the national attention that it so really does deserve. So let's get to a question I think that is important to this. Maybe we start off with you first, Beau Webster. Tell us what your background is and how you came to be involved with this particular case, the Kendrick Johnson case.
Well, my name is Beau Webster. I'm a private investigator in Florida, and my name of firm is Webster's Investigative Services out of Tallahassee, Florida. And back the first part of February, I was called by the family attorney to come to Valdosta and look at the case to see if I was interested in maybe pursuing the investigation. My background is law enforcement in South Florida in the Fort Lauderdale area for years, and I've had my private investigator's license and agency for the past 8 years, where we do all types of investigative work, a lot of high-profile criminal cases, along with large murder cases. I went to Valdosta and actually met the attorney representing the family and met Mr. and Mrs. Johnson at that time, and came on board as a investigator to try to determine what exactly happened to their 17-year-old son Kendrick Johnson.
Okay, the same question for you, Fred. Not everyone knows your reputation as an author, but tell us a little bit about your background and how you came to be involved with this case and why.
Well, I'm a true crime author. I've been a true crime author for about the last 20 years. Actually, prior to that, I was a columnist for the Arts and Leisure section of the New York Times, I worked on a number of murder cases over the years, probably 20 some odd, throughout the United States. And I met Beau Webster, the gentleman from Tallahassee, in a courtroom in 2011, February. During the trial of Gary Hilton, I was working on a book called Trails of Death, which was about Hilton, who was a serial killer, and he killed people in three different states. And Beau and I sort of hit it off, and we continued to talk and to each other. And sometime around, I'd say April of this year, Beau called and told me about this young man who had been discovered in the old gym at this high school in Valdosta. I didn't even know where Valdosta was, Dan. I'm more familiar with just going down the I-95 corridor on the east coast of the United States, and just going, through the coastal area. And Beau told me that this boy had been discovered rolled up in a gym mat, dead. And I took one look at the photograph, which looked like his face had been, at the time, we thought that the face had been beaten in. We since discovered there was other damage as a result of what had occurred. But in any case, it didn't make much sense to me. And quite frankly, I have a child, and as do most of the people working on this case. And as soon as I realized, that the parents at that point didn't have any other resources as far as anybody to investigate for them, with exception, of course, Mr. Webster, I said, I'm in, and then what I did was I got someone else involved who I work with, and I started investigating and working with Beau, and I went down to Georgia back in June. Beau and I then went to see one of the people involved in the case, who was a paramedic, who was the first on the scene, and that's when I knew that this thing was pretty serious, because that paramedic, when Beau tried to talk to him, was extremely scared. I've never seen an individual as scared as this guy was. And I knew something was up, and so I just stayed on it with Beau.
Tell us a little bit more about that conversation with the paramedic, please.
Me? Me or Beau? Well, I'll tell you.
Whoever's best suited.
Well, basically what happened was we went out to talk to this paramedic who Beau had identified through his investigation as the first individual in the scene, and he had some other information. And it was just basically going to be a basic, what did you see, et cetera, et cetera. And he came out of his house, and I just wrote about this for something. And he came out of his house. He was holding his son. And when Beau explained that he was there to talk about Kendrick Johnson, this guy froze. I mean, his voice trembled, and he was scared. And he wouldn't talk to us. He was very polite. He just said, go talk to the hospital that I work for, or something of that nature. He went back in his house, closed the door. And Beau turned to me and said, "Fred, these people are scared." And I sort of looked around me, and I was a bit paranoid at that moment, to be honest with you, Dan. And that's exactly the way that I felt the entire time I was in Valdosta, which is like somebody was watching me. And I'm convinced now that there are individuals there that were keeping track of us, and I don't think we're being paranoid about it, because we're out to get to the truth, and there are people who don't want the truth to be out.
Now, for all those in the audience that don't know about this case as of yet, because we have a pretty significant international audience, maybe we can, maybe one of you can go through the official story as it unfolded in terms of what the again what characters said what and when, and what exactly did they impart to the public. So we're talking about the sheriff, and we're talking about the Georgia Bureau of Investigation. So maybe, Fred, you can tell us what, or Beau, what exactly was the report in the beginning. Again, Beau, you knew about this story first, so maybe you can tell us about what you first knew and what was the official line, and who were the players, the characters that were imparting this information to the media.
Well, when I started the investigation, naturally, the victim, Kendrick Johnson, 17-year-old black male student, was he went missing January 10th from his third or fourth block, which would be somewhere between 1:30 p.m. and 3 o'clock on Thursday afternoon, which would be the 10th of January. And he was last seen in the hallway of the school and entering the gymnasium, which is the secondary gymnasium, because they have a newer large facility that they play most of their basketball games and any other kind of activities are in the newer complex. So this is called like a secondary gym, and there's surveillance cameras in the gymnasium, as well as the surroundings of the school. And he never reported to his third or fourth block, so he was missing. And he went that evening missing, never came home, which was very unusual for him. According to the parents, they would always have contact with Kendrick, and he would call if he was running late and let them know that maybe he was staying after for a basketball game or some other activity at school. And he didn't show up at home later that night, and the parents were concerned, naturally. And 3 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning, it's still a school night, and he's still missing, and no word from Kendrick. And so then there was a missing report made the next morning, and Kendrick's body was found around between 9:30 and 10 o'clock on Friday morning by students and by the faculty members of the high school. And that's when it's the strangest case that I think I've ever worked in investigation or in law enforcement, where there's just so much evidence that was never collected and gathered, and the sheriff's department naturally was notified immediately that there was a body found in the gym, and that the body was found vertically wrapped up inside of a wrestling mat. And that's what alarmed everyone, and all of a sudden the sheriff's department becomes involved in an investigation, and Georgia Bureau of Investigation was notified to respond as well. And generally the coroner is notified immediately when there's a death or a victim in a crime. And the coroner was not notified until later on in the day, which was maybe around between 4 and 4:30 in the afternoon, which is very odd.
And the
coroner. Go ahead.
Well, if I may add, what happens in terms of the players is this: within hours. Beau is, summarized it, of course, extremely well. But within hours, the family is told by Stride Jones, who's one of the investigators working for Sheriff Chris Prine, that there is no evidence of foul play, and which is a very strange thing to say when you're just starting an investigation. At least that's my personal opinion on this. I've never heard of anything like this, and I concur with Beau that this is the strangest case that I've certainly ever worked. And then within maybe 48 hours, with only the preliminary autopsy results in, not the completed autopsy results, Sheriff Chris Prine tells the media that Kendrick died by reaching into this mat, and it's a huge mat. It's at least 6 feet tall. And he reached in, he lost his balance, he fell in, he couldn't get out, he was in such a position that he couldn't breathe, and he died. And that's it. End of story. And at the same time, Wes Taylor, who is the superintendent of the school district, sends out a press release saying, "Oh, this is an awful thing. We hope that the family will get over this. Now it's time to mourn, et cetera, et cetera." And it's like everybody just wanted to sort of like push it aside and wipe it away, except we got one little problem, Dan, okay, which is that the clothing that Kendrick is wearing disappears. The mat disappears. As you pointed out, by the time the body is presented to Dr. Anderson, Dr. William Anderson in Orlando for the second autopsy, the organs have disappeared. And to date, the surveillance video has disappeared. So what do you make of all of that? What do you make of all of that? And at the same time, the most important element, I think, of this is this. The Georgia Bureau of Investigation does the autopsy. The results don't come out until May the 2nd, and they claim, again, positional asphyxia, except there's one little problem. Positional asphyxia would mean that the boy's lungs would have filled with fluid as a result of suffocation. His lungs, in the report, weighed the normal amount, which means he didn't die from positional asphyxia. That is a key to understanding this whole thing. And even though this doctor comes out with this report, the GBI refuses to take a look at it. They refuse to review what the doctor has done or their own findings, and so does the sheriff. And they just want to close the whole thing down and say, hey, he just fell in. Oh, and I might add one other thing. We have an email from a GBI executive in which this individual says, oh, he wasn't reaching for a shoe, he was reaching for a book. They can't even get their story straight, which is what I wrote in ebony.com, where I've been reporting on this. They can't get their story straight, Dan. It's in some ways it is mind-boggling, but they can get away with it because dealing with the authorities in Georgia, and I'm pretty straightforward in some of in what I say. It's like walking into the 19th century. Okay, people in the thing that I really need to emphasize is this: if you're African American and you're in Georgia, in most places you're a second-class citizen, and especially in a place like Valdosta, you're a second-class citizen, even though this is the 21st century, and people are scared. People are scared, and they're scared of the cops, and they're scared of talking. And, of course, that makes our job that much tougher. And now I'll just shut up and let Beau talk for the rest of the show.
No.
What I found interesting is that...
This is Beau. The inside, the core of that mat, the mat is about 6 foot or a little taller than that, but the inside core of that mat is around 14 inches in diameter. And Kendrick's shoulders from tip to tip were 19 or a little over 19 inches. I tried myself the father, Kenneth, tried. We both made attempts to try to get our bodies inside of the core of that mat, and we were unsuccessful. We were not able to do it. So that alone tells you that, I mean, there's just no way that he could conceivably just push himself down or jump into the inside of that mat and die of asphyxiation. To retrieve what is said to be either tennis shoes or a book, there are two different stories to that, and he was a triathlete, so he was in great shape. According to his dad, he was very strong and able to take care of himself. So even if he was inside of a mat, he would have been able to knock the mat down and get out of the mat. But it just doesn't make any sense. And probably a couple months after I started the immediately after I started the investigation, I started asking for the surveillance tapes, which was never, to this moment, has never been given to me. And I think the family maybe just got some of these surveillance tapes in the last few weeks. But I asked to go into the secondary gym where the body was found weeks after I began this investigation. And the family attorney and Mr. and Mrs. Johnson and myself went to the gym so that we could go inside of the secondary gym, take photographs, take measurements, look to see where all the surveillance cameras are placed, to get a good idea of, what the inside of that gym looks like. And we were told at the front door of the administration office that your investigator is not welcome here today. And, I mean, it really floored me and alarmed me that, what's going on here? Why can't we go into the gym? And I was turned away, and I was told that expect a call within a week that I could return and then go back into the gym. And that call was never made. And back probably 2 weeks after school broke for summer break, that's when I had received notice that we could go into the gym and take a look at everything, take our measurements, take photographs into the secondary gym at that time, which was months after the fact. And it's just very frustrating to me, and I know how frustrating it is to that family to have to go through this. They were allowed to go in the gym that day, but by that time, there's no evidence whatsoever probably to gather, and all the information and all the evidence that we've asked for in all these months, 9 or 10, actually 10 months now, all the evidence is not available. It's either been destroyed or it's being held somewhere, but I have not seen any of the evidence, the mat, the clothing, anything that would pertain to, Kendrick's body or any type of DNA that might have been gathered.
Now you talk about the family, but the family has been adamant and dedicated to this cause. So once they got the official explanation from authorities, they staged daily protests at the courthouse. They were instrumental in, they've now hired or attracted attorney Benjamin Crump, and as a result, they were successful in court getting to be able to exhume their son's body for a second autopsy. So, Fred, tell us about that endeavor, that initiative to do that, and what has resulted from that second autopsy report.
Sure. Let me just add one thing, that as far as Ben Crump is concerned, Beau is being modest. Ben Crump was hired at Beau's recommendation because Beau knows Mr. Crump from Tallahassee. So he recommended that to the attorney who was representing the family. and that's how he came on board relatively recently. Now, what happened in terms of the second autopsy is that the family petitioned to disinter the body for a second autopsy. The petition was granted, and what makes that interesting is that the petition was granted on May the 1st, and that made headlines. At that point, there was very little in the way of publicity. The following day, on May 2nd, the authorities stole the headlines back. That's when they released the results of the first autopsy, where they claimed it was positional asphyxiation. About 6 weeks later, in the middle of June, and Beau can comment more on this because he was there, Kendrick's body was disinterred, the vault, placed on a flatbed truck, taken to Orlando, Florida, where Dr. William Anderson performed the second autopsy. When body was presented to Dr. Anderson, he opened up the body. That's when he discovered the organs were missing. But he did something that the first autopsy, that had not been done at the first autopsy, and that was he dissected Kendrick's neck, and he discovered a severe hemorrhage, and in his opinion, the boy died from one blow to the neck, which caused his heart to stop. That is his opinion. And what makes this interesting is that second autopsy, the results are widely accepted within the African American community, though within the white community, not so much. So you have this dichotomy going on, and which makes it very, very difficult to get to the truth, because for every step forward that we make in the investigation, somebody else will come back and say, with some sort of explanation that the second autopsy doesn't have any valid results for whatever reason. People have actually gone after Dr. Anderson, his reputation, in order to discredit the results of the autopsy. But it was that autopsy that really we were waiting for. The results came in September, and by that time, the U.S. Attorney, Michael J. Moore, for the Middle District of Georgia, had received the report from the attorney representing the family, and he'd already started to review the materials. And I kid around with Mr. Beau when I get him on the phone. Beau's actually met him a couple of times. I've only talked to him on the phone, but when I talk to him, I go, "Are you the only federal official who's earning his money?" And he laughs. And he's a real regular guy, and he is really concerned with getting to the truth. And so that second autopsy is really what started to propel things forward and begin to gather some steam, as you pointed out, regarding getting attention.
Right. I'm sorry. The other thing that's so, I guess, mind-boggling and confusing, Dan, on this is that when the funeral arrangements were made for Kendrick, there were no. He was heavily involved and very active in all the sports programs, football, basketball, at the high school, and when he was buried, there were no teams or no players at his funeral, which is very odd. I mean, it's just hard to understand. And then when I was out doing the preliminary investigation and pounding the street every day, talking to witnesses and people that might be able to shed some light on and give any type of information that might be helpful, I would talk to faculty members and students, and the faculty members just said that they could not talk. They are forbidden to talk to anyone pertaining to the investigation, and that I would have to go through their subordinates because they would stand a chance at losing their jobs, losing their retirement. So, when you've got people that probably know something and you can't talk to them because they're scared and they've been threatened, then, it's hard to conduct an investigation like that. They've even had faculty members, I guess, leave the school for whatever reason. But it's a sad thing because this family is just having to relive this for 10 months, really 11 months now. And with Mr. Michael Moore, the U.S. Attorney, coming on board here last week when he announced that now the Department of Justice is on board and looking into it. That has been just a big help in this case, and he's just a great guy that is looking for justice. And I have met with him on 2 different occasions and had meetings with he and his staff to present all the evidence pertaining to this case, and now they can go ahead and move forward, and hopefully there's justice right around the corner.
Well, I've been reading a lot of stuff online in the last little while. Like I say, this story is really gaining a lot of steam. CNN, CBS, and like I mentioned to you, 4,000 comments just after one article. So. But the thing is that what they're saying in some of these articles is that there have been some suspects from the high school itself and another suspect from another school. And, I wanted to mention this, too, is that even Michael Moore has said that he's warning his jurisdiction is limited as a federal prosecutor, but he said after lengthy review of evidence collected by authorities and the family's own investigator, that sufficient basis exists to warrant a formal review of the facts. Now, for us folks that aren't so familiar with these kinds of things, tell us what exactly can potentially happen from this. What would be the likely outcome if he does this review? And again, is a review a reopening of the case, or what exactly is the review, and what can the review actually lead to?
Can I take that one?
Certainly.
Sure.
Oh, okay. First, when Michael uses that, and I call him Michael, but it's just the way it is. When you talk, like I said, when you talk to this guy, he's a regular guy, and when he what he's actually done is opened an official investigation. Okay, and it's a federal investigation versus a county or state investigation. And what he can do is he can do one of 3 things. He can charge basically in 3 different areas. One, a civil rights violation. That is, Kendrick Johnson lost his life because he was African American, and essentially this is a hate crime. That's number 1. And number 2, he can prosecute for if there is corruption on the part of state, county agencies. He can bring a criminal action against them for this. So if he finds out that, as we suspect, that you have a conspiracy where you have county and state conspiring to obliterate the truth, just like they've obliterated the evidence, he can take action and prosecute in federal court. Now, the third thing he can do is he can use what is known as the Rico Statutes in the states, which originally were designed to prosecute the mob or the mafia, but have been used successfully to prosecute when you have a conspiracy, exactly what we're talking about here, where you have a number of different agencies that get together and conspire to conceal the truth. And those agencies can be anything from police agencies, it could be school agencies, it could be whatever it might be, but he follows that evidence. on the other hand, and so we get into it's very historic. You know, it's historical really, because he has to make a decision about who has venue. Is it the state? Is it the federal government? And he's got to go on the basis of what the evidence is. And a lot of the evidence that he is looking at is the evidence that Beau has gathered, including identifying suspects. So what's happened as we speak is that Mr. Moore has gotten agents from the Federal Bureau of Investigation to come down to Macon, who he's met with, and then they would dispatch to Valdosta to begin their investigation and interviewing interested parties. And then he'll take all of that information into account and make a decision about what he's going to do. How'd I do?
Yep, that's exactly right.
Now, the question I have is that the second autopsy, you said, has been challenged to a certain degree by some members of the community, obviously the police and the people that did the first autopsy, saying that the death can be attributed to the blunt force trauma and then the heart attack or the heart stopping. Wouldn't it be prudent, I guess, to have their own investigator do their own autopsy, or is that in the realm of possibility? Tell our audience about that.
You want to take that one, Beau?
Well, I mean, it's the second autopsy. I mean, we're talking about the second autopsy being performed because, the body was transported to Orlando, and that's where Dr. Anderson performed the second autopsy, and his conclusion was that, there was trauma to the body and trauma to the right side of the neck and right side of the jaw. But you've got, GBI and the local law enforcement agencies that I guess, are connected with that first autopsy being in Macon, Georgia. And that's where, the conflict's been, and that's where the first autopsy comes back that there was, natural causes as asphyxiation, and we all knew that was not the case. I don't know if there's anything you want to add to that or not, but
well, I'm asking what if that second autopsy is challenged at all, then would it make sense to have another autopsy done, or is there even any ability in terms of, I don't really know how the protocol for this, but wouldn't that be a good start?
Well, sure, because you're using logic, but see, it isn't that the first autopsy was challenged. The first, I'm sorry, it wasn't that the second autopsy was challenged by the authorities. They never challenged it. They just said, we're not going to look at it. They dismissed it. They never looked at it. And they're not being, as Dr. Anderson said, how do you call yourself a scientist when you're not open? And the answer is, I'm sorry, you're not a scientist. If that's, if this is the way you're going to act. Now, in terms of doing a third autopsy, sure. I mean, I understand exactly what you're saying. I don't know how practical that would be, but that's not. But it's irrelevant, quite frankly, because it's not going to happen. The state is not interested in doing this. They're saying, hey, this is it, okay? And significant members of the white community are backing up the state. So, a third autopsy, to get a third opinion, I don't. What do you think, Beau? I don't think that's going to happen.
I don't see that happening. I'd really be surprised if it does, but I don't see that happening at all. I think I think everyone knew from the first autopsy that was not the case, and the second autopsy would reveal exactly what everyone thought would happen in the results, and that was that there was trauma to the body. And so, no, I can't see a third autopsy. I mean, that would naturally be left up to, now it would be left up to the government and to Mr. Moore if he called for a third autopsy, but I just don't see that happening. And you know, we've done so much legwork on this case, and so much paperwork and so much paper trail. I mean, I've got my paralegal that does a lot of great work for me, Matt Mingus, with Stephen R. Andrews' law firm, that he has drawn up motions and drafted so many documents asking for all the government, state government and law enforcement agencies, the coroner, the funeral homes. He's asked for, you know, we've just asked for so much information, and we've gotten some of it, and some of it we haven't. You know, we asked for the county commissioners to have a meeting with us months and months back, and they said, yes, we'll go ahead and set it up. However, you're going to have to be with our county attorneys when that meeting takes place. And I said, that's not a problem. We'll be glad to address everything we have with them as well. And the phone call never existed. They never got back to us. And the school board was the same way. We've asked for meetings with the school officials, and that we wanted them to be present so that we could address our issues and find out exactly what was going on in the school. And to this minute, we've never had that meeting as well. They've never gotten back to us.
Well, the question I have, and maybe you can answer this, Fred, is that, you know, despite Michael J. Moore's being able to, you know, convince you that he's dedicated to finding out the truth in this, is this going to lead to a murder indictment? Does he have the power first, or what are the stages that can go that this can be a possibility? Because that's what we're looking for, is to find out who murdered Kendrick Johnson. And if you're saying the Georgia Bureau of Investigation is not going to help out, and the other question I wanted to ask, and sorry for the convoluted question, was what's the significance of the organs in both of your minds? Is there any significance at all to those missing organs?
Well, let me answer the first question, which is the first question is that you asked was, what can Mr. Moore do? Can Mr. Moore bring a charge of murder? Absolutely. If it falls under the aegis of the federal government, if he can show that Kendrick Johnson was denied his civil rights by being murdered by the 5 individuals that Beau Webster has already identified, the answer is yes. Period. The answer is yes. Now, in terms of the organs, I think that the organs being missing, that would not have been an uncommon thing 10 years ago, especially in some more remote venues in the United States. All you got to do is look at it from this point of view. Organs are organs of a person who you think has been killed are evidence. Boom. Okay? Put it together. The organs are missing. The mat is missing. The clothing is missing. The surveillance video is missing. Somebody's are hiding something. And one of the great things that you have done, Dan, is a result of our last conversation about this back in June. An individual heard this in Georgia, and he came forward as a source, and I've nicknamed him the Falcon after the Marvel comic books character, because I'm a comic book geek. And he has helped me understand what it's like to be African American in Georgia, and specifically in Valdosta. And he has really helped me to understand what's going on there. And this is the kind of stuff that I haven't written about yet, because in writing for Ebony.com, I'm doing more of the news stuff. But when I do the book on this, and then I'll be able to really get into this, because to me this is what's really interesting, which is the fears that people put up with, the barriers between the races, and what people believe. And it's amazing, Dan, with everything that we have talked about. Here tonight, I've talked to Caucasians in Valdosta who want to maintain that Kendrick died from positional asphyxiation, which is about the same as saying that the Starship Enterprise exists. I mean, I'd like to believe it does, but it doesn't. I'm sorry, not yet. Maybe in a couple of centuries. My apologies to Bill Shatner, but it's just, So to answer your question, I've done it a long way around. Mr. Moore can absolutely bring murder charges, and again, Beau is being very. He's much more circumspect than I am, but the fact is, Beau's identified the suspects. Okay, he's and Mr. Moore is using Beau's information to now go, and the FBI is using this stuff as leads. And they're in Valdosta, and if I was those bad guys and I was listening right now, I would say that one of you better come forward and make a deal real quick, and because otherwise they're going to throw the book at you.
Yep. So maybe it is a good thing that, in some ways, if you could say that there are federal prosecutors looking at this case, because there was really, obviously, a concerted effort for this case to go away. That looks pretty obvious.
Absolutely.
So you'd hate to have those same authorities maybe charge the wrong person or admit that there may have been foul play, but then, again, do a shoddy investigation. So maybe, in the end, it'll be good that federal prosecutors look at this. Because it looks like a big story. It looks like that's what I realized when I first looked at this, that instinctively there's so much going on with this. Not only cover-up, but it's a very, very incredible story.
I think it's going to make
it is, and I guess it's been going on for a number of years in that town and in that county. There's a lot of cases where, people are they're scared to death, and they don't know where to turn. They don't know who to talk to. It took a long time to get any kind of faith build up in these people, so that they would talk to you. And so many of the kids are juveniles, so you have to have the parents present when you talk to them. And the parents are even trying to get the children, the students to partake and give you, quality information. And it's hard to do when you first start out because of the threats and people. They're afraid to talk. They have nothing to say, and we finally gained enough trust in these people that they have come forth, and now we just have to put it in the hands of the Department of Justice. And I honestly do believe that the right person is there to lead this attack, and that being Mr. Moore.
Now, the family has been instrumental in having this case stay open, stay alive, stay in the public eye. What is the family's, are they feeling optimistic at this point based on...
Fred, I don't know if you want to answer that or not. Or
well, I I think that the family is they've been used to being lied to. At least that's the way that they feel. I haven't spoken to them lately, but I don't think optimism, though, would be the correct term. No, I don't think that they're optimistic. I think more like they're realistic about what can and can't be done. There is now a concerted public relations campaign since Mr. Crump came on board. There's also a public relations person that's been hired to work out of Atlanta, and so very periodically they're releasing information. I can also tell you that CNN has been on this from the beginning, but I'm actually, and Beau is we're working with NBC, and they've been on this actually since way before CNN. But we're building it. You know what I mean? We're not going out there and saying, X, Y, Z, and D, just for the sake of saying something. We're building this thing, and we're continuing to investigate. So while Mr. Moore is doing his investigation, we're not stopping. We are not stopping. We are involved actively in investigating this case and in actively investigating the suspects.
Right. I mean, even though this has gone this far, I mean, on a daily basis, I am still doing investigation work on this case, and we'll continue to do that until everything is solved and the suspects, receive justice for what they've done.
And it will happen. It is going to happen. This is not going away. They will not be able to kick this under the rug as the authorities have tried to do, the state authorities. It's not going to happen. Not now, not in the glare of international publicity. It's going to go forward, and eventually there will be a murder indictment. And I think it's going to be sooner rather than later.
What I'm most interested in reading your book, Fred, and again, I congratulate you guys beforehand for this because I'm just fascinated by this story, and I'm sure many people will as well, is there's a murder investigation. I'm very curious to see the circumstances of why this young man was killed, but I'm also even more intrigued by why the cover-up could go all the way to the Georgia Bureau of Investigation that could include all these people. So there's certainly two really very fascinating stories, but I think the most interesting to me is the cover-up, really.
It really is, and I've told a lot of people that this is a case where it's unbelievable how much the white community is behind this, and people would not understand it unless they actually talk to the white community. But there's so many people out there, thousands and thousands. I mean, it just goes on and on of how much support there is from the white community wanting justice, and just thinks that that this crime that was done to this 17-year-old is uncalled for, and there's a lot of support out there. And if anyone that's listening to this radio talk show tonight, if anyone has any information that they can pass on, we would greatly appreciate it, because it comes down to, would you want, we all have children and we love them very much. Would you want your child going to school on a daily basis with a murderer or murderers that is responsible for committing such a heinous crime? I know I wouldn't, and I would put my foot down, and I just hope that someone will come forward, and we are getting a lot of great, valuable information from people that we're in contact with on a daily basis, and we just hope that it continues. And I want to thank you for this airtime, because it certainly does help. I know that when we had our first 1-hour talk show back in June, we got phone calls from all over, and it's just great to know that there's a lot of there's a lot of attention to it, and people are interested, and they want to do the right thing, and I thank you very much.
Well, I want to thank you guys. I appreciate even being involved in this case in any way at all, because I was just outraged at the case, just looking at it very, very simply, and again, trying to be objective and think, well, maybe I'm just being emotional, but instinctively I knew that there was something definitely with this, and so I'm glad that this case has caught the attention of the public, and more importantly, caught the attention of federal prosecutors. And the second autopsy and some of the things that have gone on have been encouraging to me. And so I really appreciate what you guys have done as well, and I'm really looking forward to further developments in this story. Now, I just wanted to mention, too, we talk about people contacting yourself or myself, and there was somebody just on the phone, and normally I do not have that as part of the feature of the program, but if somebody were to want to contact either Fred Rosen, Beau, Webster, or myself, you could contact me through Blog Talk Radio, and then I would pass on that message. So there was somebody just waiting in the queue, and so I wanted to mention that you just never know who is calling and what kind of information they may have. So gentlemen, we're almost wrapping up here. We've got a couple more minutes, and
sure.
So you were saying that you're still pursuing every kind of all the leads and in the investigation where it has pointed you, so you're still furthering that. What is the next, what is the next thing that you are going to be doing, I guess, in the very, very near future regarding this case? Beau.
Well, I plan on being in Valdosta, soon, and there's several people that I have that I want to make contact with, and I feel that it's going to be a very important part of the case, and I plan on doing that in the very near future, and still having contact with Mr. Moore maybe once or a couple times a week, giving more information, because like I said, we have interested parties out there that we're in touch with every day, and as we gather more information, we're comprising everything, and all this information again will be turned over to the federal government, and they can take all this material and do what they need to do. But I really feel optimistic about it, and I think it's starting to move at a quick pace. And again, I just want to thank you for the airtime, because it does help, and I appreciate your concerns, and hope to have a lot of good information here in the very near future.
Well, you're very welcome, Beau.
And as for me, I'll be continuing to report on the case for ebony.com, and then simultaneously, I plan to begin writing a book on the case, where I can really start getting into some of the issues that we've discussed tonight that don't fit in as readily to daily journalism. And I too would like to thank you very much, Dan, because you've been instrumental in helping to push this along and get justice for this young man and for his family.
Well, I can say very welcome, and I hope the very best from this program tonight, and just from the ongoing investigation that you gentlemen have done, and I wish the best for everybody. It seems like a growing movement of awareness that I'm seeing out on the web, and I think that with everybody's concerted effort, the family, the attorneys, the investigators, the Fred Rosen and excellent true crime writing, Ebony Magazine, and all the articles that are appearing on the web just in the last little while, especially with the information with the surveillance video being posted. People love video, so I really think that this case is going to gain national attention, as it so deservedly does, and I think that we'll be looking forward to not a happy ending, but at least justice being done, and I think people can pat themselves on the back when that happens by caring and sharing the information and demanding justice for this young man, Kendrick Johnson. So I want to thank you gentlemen both this evening, and I wish you the very best, and hope to hear from you very, very soon with some real good news concerning the Kendrick Johnson murder case. Thank you, gentlemen.
Dan, thank you very much. Have a good night.
Thank you, Dan. Take care, Dan.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.